story. The fluorescent lights of Morton and Burke's financial district office buzzed overhead as Derek Chase squinted at his computer screen. The quarterly reports before the lab closed at 5 p.m. The elevator dinged, and Derek's chest tightened as Courtney emerged, her hand resting unconsciously on her stomach. She wore a pale blue dress that made her look softer somehow, more vulnerable. For a moment, he almost forgot why he was there. Behind her walked Dr. Sarachin, the OB-GYN Lisa had recommended. The doctor's kind face showed no sign that she knew about the plan, about the extra tests that would be run on Courtney's blood sample. Lisa had chosen her contacts carefully. Derek waited until Courtney and Dr. Chun disappeared down the hallway before approaching the lab's reception desk. The technician, a young man with Lisa's note clipped to his computer monitor, nodded in recognition. "Mr. Chase? We're ready for you in room 3. The cheek swab procedure took less than 5 minutes. The technician, Mike according to his name tag, worked with quiet efficiency, explaining each step in a low voice. Results usually take 2 weeks, Mike said, sealing the sample. But given the circumstances, he glanced at Lisa's note again. We'll expedite it. 5 business days, maximum. Derek nodded, unable to speak. 5 days. 5 days until he had concrete proof of what he already knew in his gut. As he left the hospital, his phone buzzed with a text from Carla. DNA sample done. Steve's weekly squash game came in handy. Amazing what a determined person can accomplish with a water bottle. Despite everything, Derek smiled. He and Carla had become unlikely allies in this investigation, sharing information and supporting each other through the nightmare their spouses had created. The next 5 days stretched like taffy. Derek threw himself into work, analyzing spreadsheets until his eyes burned. At home, he watched Courtney float through their rooms, humming to herself, making lists of baby names in a small notebook she thought he hadn't noticed. "What do you think about Oliver for a boy?" she asked one evening, curled up on their sofa. "Or maybe Alexander?" Derek forced himself to look up from his laptop, where he'd been reviewing Mitch's latest surveillance photos. "Whatever you want, honey." Courtney frowned slightly. "You could be a little more excited about this." The irony almost made him laugh. "Instead," he said, "just tired. Big project at work." "You're always tired lately," she said, a note of accusation in her voice. "Ever since the Peterson account." "Don't." The word came out sharper than he intended. "Don't make this about my work." Courtney blinked, surprised by his tone. "I wasn't. I just meant." "I know what you meant." Derek closed his laptop. "I'm going to bed." He lay awake that night, listening to Courtney's steady breathing beside him, wondering how many nights she'd lain here thinking about Steve, planning their future together while pretending to be asleep. Finally, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Lisa called. "Results are in," she said without preamble. "Can you meet me?" They chose a small diner far from the hospital, far from their usual haunts. Lisa arrived first, a manila envelope clutched in her hands. Her face told Derek everything before she even spoke. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, sliding the envelope across the table. "The DNA analysis is conclusive. You're not the father," Derek finished. "I know." Lisa reached for his hand. "There's more. Based on the hormone levels and fetal development markers, she's about 12 weeks along. That means..." "The Christmas party," Derek said dully. "That's when it started. When they started planning this." "What are you going to do?" Derek pulled out his phone, scrolling to Gail Gentry's number. Exactly what they would never expect. "I'm going to let them think they've won. Let them get comfortable. And then..." "Derek," Lisa interrupted gently. "Don't let this consume you. Don't let them take anything more from you than they already have." He looked at his friend, saw the genuine concern in her eyes. "I have to do this right, Lisa. I have to make sure they can't spin this, can't make me look like the bad guy. Courtney's already been working on that, painting me as the absent husband, the workaholic who drove her away." "We know the truth," Lisa insisted. "Your real friends know who you are. Sometimes the truth needs help coming to light," Derek said, remembering Mitch's words. He dialed Gail Gentry's number. "And I'm going to make sure everyone sees it." As he waited for the lawyer to answer, Derek stared at the DNA results, at the scientific proof of his wife's betrayal. The numbers and percentages were stark, undeniable. Just like the evidence Mitch had gathered, like the text messages Carla had found, like all the signs he'd ignored for months. The time for ignoring things was over. Now it was time for action. Him swam in a sea of numbers and charts, usually his sanctuary of logic and order. But today, his mind kept drifting to the strange atmosphere that had settled over his home like a heavy fog. His mouse hovered over a cell in the spreadsheet, the cursor blinking rhythmically. The sound of retching from the master bathroom that morning echoed in his memory. Courtney had waved it off as food poisoning from the new Thai place, but it was the third time this week he'd heard those sounds. Chase? You with us? Derek's head snapped up to find Martin Wheeler, the senior partner, standing at his office door. The older man's silver eyebrows were raised expectantly. Sorry, Martin. Just double-checking these projections. Derek straightened in his chair, adjusting his navy tie. The Peterson account is showing some interesting patterns in their Q3 earnings. Martin nodded, but his eyes held a hint of concern. You've been staring at the same screen for 20 minutes. Everything all right? Just distracted, Derek admitted, running a hand through his dark hair. Courtney's been working late at the agency. Big campaign, apparently. Ah, the joys of being married to an advertising executive. Martin chuckled, leaning against the doorframe. Sandra went through a phase like that when she made partner at her firm. It'll pass. Derek forced a smile, but the knot in his stomach tightened. Courtney's phases usually involved much more enthusiasm, endless chatter about creative breakthroughs and client meetings. Lately, she'd been quiet, offering only vague responses about deadline pressure and client demands. His phone buzzed on the desk, drawing both men's attention. The screen displayed a text from their neighbor, Carla Hurley. Need to talk. Important. Can you meet today? Take care of whatever that is, Martin said, gesturing at the phone. The Peterson numbers will still be here when you get back. Derek nodded gratefully, already typing a response to Carla. The worry in his gut intensified as he remembered her expression from their brief encounter at the mailbox yesterday, drawn, tired, with something haunting in her usually bright eyes. An hour later, Derek found himself sitting across from Carla at the Daily Grind, a small coffee shop 3 blocks from his office. The afternoon crowd had thinned, leaving them relatively alone with their untouched drinks. Carla's fingers twisted her wedding ring repeatedly, a nervous habit he'd never noticed before. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, so different from her usually polished appearance. I don't know how to say this, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been debating whether to tell you for weeks. Derek's heart pounded against his ribs. Whatever it is, Carla, just say it. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking slightly as she navigated to something. I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago. Steve Spin. I knew something was wrong, but I needed proof. The phone slid across the table. Derek's world tilted as he stared at the screen. A series of photos showing Steve Hurley, Carla's husband, entering the Grand Marina Hotel. The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. In the next photo, taken 14 minutes later, Courtney walked through the same doors. There's more, Carla said softly. Hotel receipts, text messages. They've been meeting every Wednesday for months. The investigator tracked them to restaurants, hotels. Steve's been lying about business trips that never happened. Derek's coffee grew cold as Carla continued, each word another crack in the foundation of his life. She showed him credit card statements, photographs, and finally, a series of text messages her investigator had recovered. Can't wait for Wednesday. Same time, same place? S. Missing you already. Yes, usual spot. C. That perfume you wore last time. Drove me crazy. S. Just for you. Everything I do is for you now. C. I'm so sorry, Derek. Carla's voice cracked. I thought you deserved to know. Especially now. Now. The word felt like glass in his throat. The morning sickness, Carla said, meeting his eyes. I've seen Courtney rushing to the bathroom at neighborhood gatherings. And Steve, he's been looking at real estate in Mexico, talking about expanding his business there. Derek's mind raced back through the past few months. Courtney's sudden aversion to coffee, the way she'd push food around her plate at dinner, The mysterious phone calls that ended abruptly when he entered the room. All the signs he dismissed, explained away, refused to see. How long? He managed to ask. The investigator traced it back at least 6 months. Carla wiped at her eyes. But there could have been more before that. Steve started acting strange around Christmas last year. The holiday party at their house. Derek remembered Courtney and Steve laughing by the punch bowl. An inside joke he hadn't understood. How many moments like that had he missed? What are you going to do? Derek asked, suddenly realizing Carla was in this nightmare with him. She squared her shoulders, a flash of steel entering her eyes. I've already called a lawyer. Gail Gentry. She comes highly recommended for cases like this. She pushed a business card across the table. You should call her too. We might be able to help each other. Derek stared at the elegant cream-colored card. Gail Gentry, family law specialist. The edges were slightly worn, as if Carla had been carrying it around for a while, working up the courage for this conversation. Thank you, he said finally, his voice hollow, for telling me. For everything. Carla reached across the table, squeezing his hand briefly. We don't deserve this, Derek. Neither of us do. But we deserve the truth. As they left the coffee shop, Derek's phone buzzed again. A text from Courtney, working late tonight. Don't wait up. Big presentation tomorrow. He stared at the message, remembering another detail from Carla's evidence. The Grand Marina Hotel's distinctive blue and gold logo visible in the background of one photo. The same hotel where Courtney claimed her agency held client meetings. Tomorrow was Wednesday. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. Derek moved through his tasks mechanically, his mind replaying every suspicious moment, every odd conversation, every unexplained absence. The spreadsheets before him might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. At 5:45 p.m., his office phone rang. The caller ID showed home. Hello? His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Hey, honey. Courtney's voice, bright and cheerful. Too cheerful. Just wanted to remind you about dinner with Lisa and Tom on Friday. Lisa texted to confirm. Lisa O'Brien, their friend from college, now a nurse at Metropolitan General. The monthly dinner parties that had become tradition over the years. Right? Derek said, picturing Lisa's knowing looks, wondering if she had suspected something. I remembered. Great. Oh, and could you grab more ginger ale on your way home? My stomach's been a bit off lately. Derek's free hand clenched into a fist. Still? Maybe you should see a doctor. A pause, barely noticeable. Oh, it's probably just stress from this campaign. Speaking of which, I should go. Love you. The line went dead before he could respond. Derek sat in his darkening office, staring at the phone, wondering how many other lies he'd believed, how many signs he'd ignored. His computer chimed with a calendar reminder. Quarterly review meeting, tomorrow 2:30 p.m. Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. When Courtney would be at her client presentation, when she would actually be meeting Steve at the Grand Marina Hotel, just like every other Wednesday. Derek opened his bottom desk drawer and pulled out a business card he kept for emergencies. Mitch Hawkins, private investigator, former detective, Metropolitan Police Department. Sometimes, he realized, the truth needed a little professional help to come to light. The Metropolitan General Hospital's cafeteria buzzed with the usual lunch rush, but Lisa O'Brien's attention was fixed on the man sitting across from her. Derek's request to meet for lunch had seemed casual enough, but the dark circles under his eyes and the tension in his shoulders told a different story. You look like hell, Lisa said bluntly, pushing her salad around with a plastic fork. Her scrubs rustled as she leaned forward. What's really going on? Derek glanced around before speaking, his voice low. Have you noticed anything different about Courtney lately? Lisa's fork paused halfway to her mouth. A flutter of guilt crossed her features before she could hide it. Different how? The morning sickness, Lisa. Derek watched her reaction carefully. You're a labor and delivery nurse. You must have recognized the signs. The fork clattered against the plastic container. Derek, patient confidentiality. She's not your patient, is she? His voice remained steady, but his knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. Just our friend who's been throwing up every morning and avoiding wine at dinner parties. Lisa's professional mask cracked slightly. I've suspected, yes, but she hasn't confirmed anything to me. I thought maybe she was waiting to surprise you, like she surprised Steve Hurley? The words came out sharper than he intended. Lisa's face drained of color. Oh God, she whispered. Derek, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. But you knew something was wrong, he pressed. Those looks you've been giving her at dinner parties, the comments about morning sickness passing in the second trimester. I thought I was helping, Lisa admitted, pushing her salad away, dropping hints so she'd know she could talk to me. I never imagined. She trailed off, horror dawning in her eyes. The timing. Oh, Derek. Derek pulled out his phone, showing her the photos Mitch Hawkins had provided. The private investigator had been thorough, documenting weeks of Wednesday afternoon meetings at the Grand Marina Hotel. Lisa's hand flew to her mouth as she recognized Courtney and Steve in the images. I need your help, Lisa. Derek's voice softened. I need to know for sure. About everything. Lisa straightened, nurse mode engaging. You want a DNA test? Can you arrange it? Discreetly? She nodded slowly. I have connections in the lab. We can do a non-invasive prenatal paternity test. It's completely safe, just requires a blood sample from Courtney and cheek swabs from the potential fathers. The last words came out barely audible. How do we get her blood sample without her knowing? Lisa's mind raced through possibilities. Her first prenatal appointment. She'll need routine blood work. I can make sure the right people handle the samples. And if she's already had the appointment? Trust me, she hasn't. Lisa's certainty made Derek raise an eyebrow. She's been asking me general questions about first appointments, what to expect. She's nervous about it. Classic first-time mom behavior. The phrase first-time mom hit Derek like a physical blow. Lisa reached across the table, squeezing his hand. I'm sorry, she said again. I should have said something sooner about my suspicions. I never thought Courtney would. None of us did. Derek cut her off gently. That's how she's gotten away with it for so long. Their conversation was interrupted by Lisa's pager. She checked it with a frown. I have to get back to the ward. Give me a few days to arrange everything. And Derek? She caught his eye. Whatever the results show, you have people in your corner. Remember that. As Lisa hurried away, Derek's phone buzzed. A text from Mitch Hawkins. New development. Meet at my office. 4 p.m. The private investigator's office occupied a small space above a defunct travel agency. The walls were lined with filing cabinets, and a worn leather couch faced a desk cluttered with surveillance equipment. Mitch Hawkins, a barrel-chested man with salt and pepper hair, was examining photos when Derek arrived. Your wife's getting sloppy, Mitch said without preamble. Or maybe just confident. Either way, we got lucky. He spread several photos across his desk. They showed Courtney and Steve at a small cafe across town, sitting close, holding hands across the table. In one image, Steve's hand rested on Courtney's still flat stomach. Today, Derek asked, his throat tight. 2 hours ago. Not their usual meeting spot or time. Mitch shuffled through more photos. But that's not the interesting part. Watch this. He played a video on his laptop. The cafe's exterior, filmed from across the street. Steve and Courtney emerged, walking close together. They stopped at Steve's car, and the audio picked up fragments of their conversation. Tell him soon. Courtney's voice. Mexico by Christmas. Steve's reply. Can't wait to start our family. Courtney again, her hand on her stomach. Derek sank onto the leather couch, the weight of their words crushing him. Mitch stopped the video, studying his client with professional concern. There's more, the investigator said carefully. My contact at the Grand Marina Hotel provided their complete booking history. Every Wednesday for the past 8 months. Always the same room, always booked under S. Harrison. He paused. Harrison is Steve Hurley's mother's maiden name. 8 months, Derek repeated numbly. Christmas party. Mitch nodded. That tracks with what we know. Want to tell me about Christmas? Derek closed his eyes, remembering. We hosted the neighborhood holiday party. Courtney insisted, even though we usually alternate with the Hullys. She and Steve spent most of the night by the punch bowl, laughing about something. I thought. He laughed bitterly. I thought they were just being good neighbors. That's usually how it starts, Mitch said, his voice gentle. The affair began sometime around then, based on the hotel records. The pregnancy. He consulted his notes. First hotel visit after the pattern changed was about 12 weeks ago. Longer stays, room service orders for 2, no alcohol. She hasn't been drinking, Derek confirmed. Said she was doing a cleanse for work. Supporting a client's wellness campaign. Mitch gathered the photos into a folder. What's your next move? DNA test, Derek said. Friend at the hospital is arranging it. And I'm meeting with a lawyer. Gail Gentry. Mitch whistled. Good choice. Gentry's tough. She handled the Robinson divorce last year. Wife never knew what hit her. That's the plan. Derek stood, feeling steadier than he had in days. Keep following them. I want to know everything. Especially about these Mexico plans. Already on it. Mitch handed him the folder. One more thing. Your wife's best friend, Stella McCoy? She's been running interference. Takes calls from your house phone when Courtney's with Steve. Provides alibis about working late at the agency. Might want to add her to the list of people who knew. Derek added this betrayal to the growing pile. Anyone else I should know about? Working on it. Bernard Ingram, Steve's business partner, has been covering their tracks at company events. Claims Steve's at meetings when he's really... Mitch gestured at the photos. Keep digging, Derek said, heading for the door. I want to know exactly who helped them fool me. The waiting room at Metropolitan General's Laboratory Services Department seemed designed to amplify anxiety. Mint green walls, outdated magazines, and the constant hum of fluorescent lights created an atmosphere of suspended animation. Derek sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, pretending to read emails on his phone while actually watching the elevator bank. Lisa had texted him the details. Courtney's first prenatal appointment was scheduled for 10:30 a.m. Standard protocol included comprehensive blood work. All he had to do was provide his DNA sample before the lab closed at 5 p.m. The elevator dinged, and Derek's chest tightened as Courtney emerged, her hand resting unconsciously on her stomach. She wore a pale blue dress that made her look softer somehow, more vulnerable. For a moment, he almost forgot why he was there. Behind her walked Dr. Sarachin, the OB/GYN Lisa had recommended. The doctor's kind face showed no sign that she knew about the plan, about the extra tests that would be run on Courtney's blood sample. Lisa had chosen her contacts carefully. Derek waited until Courtney and Dr. Chun disappeared down the hallway before approaching the lab's reception desk. The technician, a young man with Lisa's note clipped to his computer monitor, nodded in recognition. Mr. Chase? We're ready for you in room 3. The cheek swab procedure took less than 5 minutes. The technician, Mike according to his name tag, worked with quiet efficiency, explaining each step in a low voice. Results usually take 2 weeks, Mike said, sealing the sample. His eyes flickered to Lisa's note again. But given the circumstances, we'll expedite it. 5 business days, maximum. Derek nodded, unable to speak. 5 days. 5 days until he had concrete proof of what he already knew in his gut. As he left the hospital, his phone buzzed with a text from Carla. DNA sample done. Steve's weekly squash game came in handy. Amazing what a determined person can accomplish with a water bottle. Despite everything, Derek smiled. He and Carla had become unlikely allies in this investigation, sharing information and supporting each other through the nightmare their spouses had created. The next 5 days stretched like taffy. Derek threw himself into work, analyzing spreadsheets until his eyes burned. At home, he watched Courtney float through their rooms, humming to herself, making lists of baby names in a small notebook she thought he hadn't noticed. What do you think about Oliver for a boy? She asked one evening, curled up on their sofa. Or maybe Alexander? Derek forced himself to look up from his laptop, where he'd been reviewing Mitch's latest surveillance photos. Whatever you want, honey. Courtney frowned slightly. You could be a little more excited about this. The irony almost made him laugh. Instead, he said, just tired. Big project at work. You're always tired lately, she said, a note of accusation in her voice. Ever since the Peterson account. Don't. The word came out sharper than he intended. Don't make this about my work. Courtney blinked, surprised by his tone. I wasn't. I just meant, I know what you meant. Derek closed his laptop. I'm going to bed. He lay awake that night, listening to Courtney's steady breathing beside him, wondering how many nights she'd lain here thinking about Steve, planning their future together while pretending to be asleep. 3 days into the wait, Lisa called him during lunch. How are you holding up? She asked, her voice gentle. Derek stared out his office window at the city skyline. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed. The late nights, the sudden work emergencies, the way she'd end phone calls when I walked into the room. Don't do that to yourself, Lisa said firmly. You trusted your wife. That's not a character flaw, isn't it? When does trust become willful blindness? Lisa sighed. Derek, I've known you both since college. No one saw this coming. Not even me, and I'm trained to notice things. But you did notice something, he said. The morning sickness, the changes in her behavior. Medical symptoms are different from suspecting this. Lisa paused. Have you thought about what you'll do? After. One step at a time, Derek said. First, I need to know for sure. Finally, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Lisa called. Results are in, she said without preamble. Can you meet me? They chose a small diner far from the hospital, far from their usual haunts. Lisa arrived first, a manila envelope clutched in her hands. Her face told Derek everything before she even spoke. I'm so sorry, she whispered, sliding the envelope across the table. The DNA analysis is conclusive. You're not. She couldn't finish the sentence. The father, Derek completed for her, his voice hollow. I know. Lisa reached for his hand. There's more. Based on the hormone levels and fetal development markers, she's about 12 weeks along. That means the Christmas party, Derek said dully. That's when it started. When they started planning this. What are you going to do? Derek pulled out his phone, scrolling to Gail Gentry's number. Exactly what they would never expect. I'm going to let them think they've won. Let them get comfortable. And then, Derek, Lisa interrupted gently. Don't let this consume you. Don't let them take anything more from you than they already have. He looked at his friend, saw the genuine concern in her eyes. I have to do this right, Lisa. I have to make sure they can't spin this, can't make me look like the bad guy. Courtney's already been working on that, painting me as the absent husband, the workaholic who drove her away. We know the truth, Lisa insisted. Your real friends know who you are. Sometimes the truth needs help coming to light, Derek said, remembering Mitch's words. He dialed Gail Gentry's number. And I'm going to make sure everyone sees it. As he waited for the lawyer to answer, Derek stared at the DNA results, at the scientific proof of his wife's betrayal. The numbers and percentages were stark, undeniable, just like the evidence Mitch had gathered, like the text messages Carla had found, like all the signs he'd ignored for months. The time for ignoring things was over. Now it was time for action. The leather couch in Daisy Field's office creaked as Derek shifted his weight. The certified trauma therapist credentials on the wall. He'd been staring at them for the past 10 minutes, avoiding the gentle but probing gaze of Preston Bird's sister. You haven't touched your water, Daisy observed, gesturing to the untouched glass on the side table. Her voice carried the same steady calm as her brother's, but where Preston's manifested in analytical precision, Daisy's emerged as practiced empathy. I keep thinking about Christmas, Derek said, finally meeting her eyes. Not just the party, but the whole season. Courtney insisted on new decorations, spent hours making everything perfect. Was she? He swallowed hard. Was she already planning it then? Making memories with him in our home? Daisy leaned forward slightly, her notebook balanced on her knee. Sometimes people compartmentalize. They create separate realities to justify their actions. Is that what she's doing now? Creating a reality where I'm the villain? Tell me more about that. Derek pulled out his phone, scrolling through screenshots Mitch had provided. Jenny Torres called yesterday. She and Mark canceled our dinner plans because, and I quote, they didn't want to take sides. Sides in what? I haven't said anything to anyone. But Courtney has, Daisy prompted. Apparently, she's been having lunch with different friends for months, telling them how I'm never home, how I missed her doctor's appointment because of work. Derek's laugh held no humor. An appointment I didn't even know about because it was with Steve's private physician, not her regular doctor. How did you learn about these lunches? Preston, actually. He overheard Stella McCoy at Riverside Cafe, talking to another friend about how worried she was about Courtney, about her situation. Derek's fingers tightened around his phone. Stella's been her best friend since college. She's been to every Christmas party, every birthday dinner. She was there when I proposed to Courtney at Morton's 5 years ago. And all this time, she knew. Daisy finished quietly. Not just knew. Helped. When I'm supposedly working late, Courtney calls our home phone from her cell. Stella answers, tells me Courtney's at the office if I call looking for her. They've got it down to a science. Daisy made a note in her notebook. How does that make you feel? How does it make me feel? Derek stood abruptly, pacing the office. It makes me feel like an idiot. Like everyone's been laughing behind my back. Bernard Ingram, Steve's business partner, he's been covering for them at company events. Creating fake meeting minutes, telling people Steve's in conference calls when he's really with Courtney. Daisy supplied when Derek trailed off. You know what the worst part is? Derek stopped at the window, staring out at the city below. Bernard's wife died of cancer 2 years ago. He gave a eulogy about loyalty and love that made everyone cry. And now he's helping Steve destroy his marriage, helping them fool me and Carla. People are complex, Daisy said. Their actions often reflect their own pain more than their true values. Derek turned back to her. Preston said you specialized in betrayal trauma. That you'd understand. The ripple effect, Daisy nodded. How betrayal doesn't just break trust with one person, but shatters our entire perception of reality. Friends become suspects. Memories become questionable. Every interaction gets re-examined through a new lens. I keep thinking about all our dinner parties, all those knowing looks I missed. Lisa noticed Courtney's pregnancy symptoms, but she thought. Derek sank back onto the couch. Everyone thought I knew, that we were waiting to announce it. Meanwhile, Courtney's been telling them I'm distant, uninterested, too buried in work to notice her. Creating a narrative, Daisy observed. Creating an excuse, Derek corrected. Setting the stage so when everything falls apart, everyone will say they saw it coming. Poor Courtney, trapped in a loveless marriage with a workaholic husband. No wonder she fell for Steve, with his romantic gestures and surprise lunches. You sound angry. I'm furious. Derek's voice remained steady, but his hands shook slightly. Not just at them, but at everyone who helped them. Stella arranging their alibis, Bernard covering their tracks, our friends believing her lies without ever asking me. What do you want these people to know? The question caught Derek off guard. He'd spent so much time gathering evidence, documenting betrayal, that he hadn't considered what he wanted beyond proof. He paused, organizing his thoughts. I want them to know that while they were feeling sorry for Courtney, while they were helping her deceive me, I was planning nursery colors. I was researching the best preschools, setting up a college fund. I want them to know that every late night at work was for our future. The future she was busy planning with someone else. Daisy studied him for a moment. That sounds like something they should hear. They will, Derek said quietly. When the time is right, they'll hear everything. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. A text from Preston. Bernard Ingram requesting meeting. Says it's important. Same time next week? Daisy asked as Derek stood. He nodded, already composing a reply to Preston. Outside her office, in the sterile corridor of the medical building, Derek leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. The web of lies surrounding his marriage kept growing, each new revelation adding another strand to the intricate pattern of deception. His phone buzzed again. This time from Carla. We need to talk. Found something about Mexico. The unraveling, it seemed, was just beginning. The conference room at Gail Gentry's law office offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, but Carla Hurley's attention was fixed on the documents spread across the polished mahogany table. Her normally pristine manicure showed signs of nervous chewing, and her blonde hair had escaped its usual careful styling. It's all here, she said, pushing a folder toward Derek. Steve's been setting up shell companies in Mexico for months. Property acquisitions, business licenses, even school registration inquiries. Her voice cracked slightly. They're not just planning a vacation. They're planning a life. Derek leafed through the papers, each page adding another piece to the puzzle. How did you get these? Bernard Ingram. Carla's lips twisted in a bitter smile. Apparently, guilt finally got the better of him. He came to me first, probably thought I'd be the easier target. She gestured to another stack of papers. He didn't just bring documents. He brought proof of every lie, every cover-up, meeting minutes he falsified, expense reports he doctored. All of it. Gail Gentry, who had been silently observing from the head of the table, finally spoke. Bernard's cooperation changes everything. As Steve's business partner, his testimony carries significant weight. Why now? Derek wondered aloud. Why come forward after helping them for so long? Because of this. Carla pulled out her phone, playing a video message. Courtney's face filled the screen, her hand resting on her now visible pregnancy bump as she spoke to someone off camera. Can't wait to start fresh, just us and the baby. No more hiding, no more pretending. Steve says the Mexico office is perfect cover. Everyone will think it's just a business expansion. By the time they figure it out, the video ended abruptly. Derek's throat tightened. When was this? Yesterday. Bernard recorded it during a company lunch. She didn't know he was there. Carla's hands trembled slightly. They're planning to leave before the baby comes. Steve's been liquidating assets, transferring funds through multiple accounts to hide the trail, which is where Bernard's guilt finally kicked in. Gail interjected. He's been helping with the financial arrangements, but apparently, pregnancy fraud and international flight crossed a line even he couldn't justify. A knock at the conference room door interrupted them. Preston Bird entered, followed by a man Derek recognized from Steve's company photos, Bernard Ingram himself. The business partner looked nothing like his corporate headshot. His expensive suit hung loosely on his frame, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "I'm sorry," were Bernard's first words. "I know it doesn't help, but I am sorry." Derek studied the man who had helped orchestrate his wife's deception. "Why did you do it?" Bernard sank into a chair, his shoulders slumping. He was there for me when Rachel died. Helped me handle the estate, took over my clients while I grieved. I owed him." He laughed hollowly. "At least, that's what I told myself at first. Then it just became routine, covering meetings, creating alibis. I didn't think about the real people getting hurt. Until now," Carla said, her voice sharp. "What changed?" "The baby." Bernard met her eyes. "Last week, Steve asked me to help set up offshore accounts for the child's future. He had it all planned: private schools in Mexico, trust funds under different names. He talked about it like it was a business transaction. That's when I realized what I was really helping them do." Preston, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "You have proof of these accounts?" Bernard nodded, pulling a USB drive from his pocket. "Everything. Account numbers, transfer records, property deeds. Steve thinks I'm still working on the paperwork for the Mexico office, but I've been documenting everything." While Preston and Gail examined the drive's contents on a laptop, Derek watched Courtney through the conference room windows. She stood in the building's atrium 3 floors below, obviously pregnant now in a flowing maternity dress, accepting congratulations from a group of women. Even from this distance, he could see her practiced smile, the way she touched her stomach for maximum effect. "She's meeting the hospital auxiliary board," Carla said, following his gaze. "Stella McCoy arranged it. They're planning a baby shower." She hesitated. "Derek, there's something else you should know." He turned to her, bracing himself. "The nursery furniture you ordered? She's been having it redirected to a storage unit. Steve's been helping her sell it piece by piece, replacing it with things they picked out together." Carla pulled up photos on her phone. Bernard found these on Steve's computer. The images showed Courtney and Steve in a high-end baby boutique, examining cribs and rocking chairs. They looked happy, normal, like any expecting couple planning for their first child. "The shower is next week," Carla continued. "They've invited half the city's social circle. Stella's been telling everyone how excited you are, how you're finally stepping up as a husband." While they plan their escape, Derek finished. Bernard cleared his throat. The Mexico plans are set for 3 weeks from now. Steve has a business conference in Cabo. He'll set up everything there, then return for Courtney a week later. They've already rented a villa. Gail looked up from the laptop. This is more than just an affair. This is calculated fraud, international flight risk, potential parental kidnapping. This is my wife, Derek said quietly, planning to disappear with another man's child while systematically destroying my reputation. He turned to Bernard. I need everything. Every email, every document, every conversation you witnessed. Can you do that? Bernard nodded slowly. Yes. And there's more. Steve's been recording your wife's calls to your house, the one Stella answers. He keeps them as insurance, proof of their alibis. I can get those too. Do it, Gail ordered. Preston, work with Bernard on securing the electronic records. Carla, I need you to document every interaction, every suspicious behavior you've noticed. Derek. She paused. Are you sure you want to wait? With this evidence, we could move now. Derek watched as someone else joined Courtney's group below. Stella McCoy, carrying gift bags and wearing a broad smile. The two women embraced, their happiness seemingly genuine. Yet another performance in their ongoing show. Not yet, he said. Let them think they're winning. Let them get comfortable. He turned back to the room. They've had months to plan their deception. We're going to give them exactly what they expect. Right until the moment we don't. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the city, matching the darkness in Derek's heart. The thunder, when it came, felt like an omen, a preview of the tempest to come. The home office that had once been Derek's sanctuary now resembled a war room. 3 whiteboards covered the walls, each filled with timelines, connections, and evidence logs. Sticky notes created a colorful constellation of betrayal, each one representing another piece of the puzzle Gail Gentry insisted they document. Walk me through it again, Preston Bird said, studying the central board. He'd stopped by under the pretense of dropping off more files, but Derek recognized the concern beneath his colleague's professional demeanor. Derek pointed to the earliest date on the timeline. The affair started around last Christmas. That tracks with the hotel records, the first suspicious credit card charges, the changes in Courtney's behavior. And Bernard confirmed that timing? He remembered Steve missing their annual end-of-year review. Said it was the first time he covered for him. Derek moved along the timeline. By February, they were meeting regularly at the Grand Marina Hotel. Mitch's surveillance confirmed the pattern. Every Wednesday, sometimes more often. Preston nodded, making notes in his ever-present legal pad. The pregnancy? Conceived in early March, according to the DNA test results. Around the time Steve first mentioned expanding to Mexico, Derek's finger traced forward to more recent events. Bernard started noticing large transfers in April. By May, they had the shell companies set up. And Courtney's been laying groundwork the whole time, Preston observed, gesturing to another board covered in social interactions and alibis. The lunches with friends, the subtle complaints about your work hours, the sympathy gathering, while simultaneously playing the excited mother-to-be. Derek's voice held no emotion as he indicated a collection of ultrasound photos. She's been sharing these with everyone, talking about how supportive I've been, how we're both so excited. Building her cover story, building her escape route, Derek corrected. Every person who believes her version of events is another potential character witness if things go wrong. Every sympathetic friend is another ally in their plan. Preston studied his friend's face. You're angry. I'm focused. Derek turned to the third board, covered in legal documents and financial records. Gail says timing is everything. We need to catch them in the act, document every lie, every manipulation. No room for denial or explanations. The evidence is solid, Preston assured him. Bernard's testimony alone isn't enough. Derek pulled a new stack of papers from his desk. Look at these. Stella's been busy. Preston leafed through the documents, screenshots of social media posts, email chains, text messages, all showing a carefully crafted narrative. Derek, the workaholic husband, finally embracing fatherhood. Courtney, the patient wife, supporting his long hours while preparing for their baby. She's good, Preston admitted. The timestamps show she's been planting these breadcrumbs for months. building a digital trail of their version of events. While helping them maintain their affair, Derek clicked through his laptop, bringing up surveillance photos. Every Wednesday, she calls the house phone from Courtney's cell, creates a record of Courtney working late while she's actually with Steve. Preston finished. But why document it? Why keep records? Insurance. Derek pulled up an email Bernard had provided. They're covering every angle. If something goes wrong, they have proof of their story. Texts, calls, social media posts. All showing Courtney as the devoted wife, me as the absent husband. A knock at the door interrupted them. Carla entered, carrying more files. Her face showed the strain of recent weeks, but her voice remained steady. Bernard came through again, she announced, spreading documents across Derek's desk. Complete records of Steve's financial transactions, wire transfers, property purchases in Mexico, everything. She spread printouts across the desk. He's been moving money through 3 different shell companies. Bernard provided account numbers, transaction dates, and confirmation of their plans. Preston added, examining the documents. These property records show a villa purchase in Cabo, utilities already set up in Steve's name. Derek studied the papers, his analyst's mind cataloging each detail. What about the business expansion cover story? Completely fabricated, Carla confirmed. Bernard says Steve's been rejecting real expansion opportunities for months, claiming the Mexico deal is priority. But there is no deal, just empty offices and false paperwork. Which is where this gets interesting, Preston interjected, pulling out his phone. I had our firm's international law experts review everything. What they're planning, taking the baby out of the country under false pretenses, using fraudulent business documents. It crosses several legal lines. Derek added the new documents to his evidence wall. Have they made any mistakes? Anything we can use? They're getting bolder, Carla said. Courtney's been asking friends about international schools, telling them it's for a client's marketing campaign. Steve's been spotted at high-end baby boutiques during business hours. They think they're untouchable. That's exactly what we need, Gail Gentry announced from the doorway. No one had heard her arrive. The lawyer surveyed the evidence-covered walls with approval. The more confident they get, the more mistakes they'll make. She moved to the central board, examining the timeline. Bernard's testimony gives us the foundation. Mitch's surveillance provides proof of the affair. The DNA test confirms paternity. Now we wait for them to hand us the final pieces. The baby shower's tomorrow, Carla reminded them. Stella's turned it into a social event of the season. Half the country club will be there. Let them celebrate, Derek said quietly. Let them think everything's going according to plan. Gail nodded approvingly. Keep playing your part. Courtney thinks you're clueless, too absorbed in work to notice anything. Steve believes his business expansion story is solid. Even Stella thinks she's successfully selling your workaholic image to everyone. Meanwhile, Preston added, we document everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every person involved in the deception. Derek stood at the evidence wall, adding another sticky note to the constellation of betrayal. They've had months to write their story. We're almost ready to show them ours. The room fell silent as each person contemplated the scope of deception displayed before them. Months of lies, carefully documented. A network of conspirators, meticulously mapped. A plan for escape, thoroughly exposed. One more week, Gail said finally. Give them one more week to dig themselves deeper. Then, she met Derek's eyes. Then we end this. As his allies departed, Derek remained in his home office, studying the evidence of his wife's betrayal. Tomorrow, she would be the center of attention at her baby shower, accepting gifts and congratulations, playing the role of happy, expectant mother. Steve would maintain his business expansion facade, laying groundwork for their escape. Stella would continue spreading their carefully crafted narrative, and Derek would wait, gathering evidence, building his case, preparing for the moment when their elaborate house of cards would finally collapse. The storm was coming. He just had to be patient enough to let it build to maximum effect. Morning light filtered through the kitchen windows of the Chase residence, casting a soft glow on Courtney as she arranged fresh-cut flowers in a crystal vase. Her baby bump, now impossible to hide at 5 months, pressed against the counter's edge as she fussed with the arrangement. Derek watched from the doorway, his laptop bag still slung over his shoulder. The evidence boards in his home office were carefully concealed behind locked doors. Gail's meticulous case files sat in his briefcase. Everything was ready. "You're home early," Courtney said, not turning around. Her voice held that practiced cheerfulness she perfected over the past months. "I thought you had the Peterson meeting today." "Postponed." Derek set his bag down, noting how she tensed slightly at his unexpected presence. "I thought we could talk." Now she did turn, one hand automatically moving to rest on her stomach, a gesture he'd seen her perform countless times in photos with Steve. "Actually, I'm glad you're here. There's something I've been wanting to tell you." Derek leaned against the doorframe, forcing his features into neutral curiosity. "Oh." Courtney moved to the kitchen table, arranging herself carefully in a chair. Everything about her was carefully arranged these days. Her expressions, her stories, her entire performance of devoted wife preparing for motherhood. "I know things have been different lately," she began, her rehearsed speech evident in every word. "I've been emotional, moody, and you've been so patient, even with all your work stress." Derek said nothing, watching her build the scene she probably practiced dozens of times. "But there's a reason for everything." She smiled, tears welling in her eyes right on cue. "Derek, we're going to have a baby. I'm pregnant." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Courtney's smile began to falter at his lack of reaction. "Honey, did you hear what I said? We're having a baby." "No," Derek said quietly. "We're not." Confusion flickered across her face. "What do you mean?" "Of course we are. I'm 5 months along." "You're 5 months pregnant," Derek agreed. "But we're not having a baby. You and Steve are." The color drained from Courtney's face. Her hand, still resting on her stomach, began to tremble. "I don't. What are you? Would you like to know what else I know?" Derek's voice remained steady as he pulled out his phone. "Every Wednesday afternoon at the Grand Marina Hotel. Room 742, booked under S. Harrison, Steve's mother's maiden name. Quite romantic, using family history for your affair." "Derek, I can explain." "The Christmas party," he continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "That's when it started, wasn't it? While I was in the kitchen mixing drinks, you and Steve were planning your future. Did you laugh about it later? About how easy it was to fool everyone." Courtney gripped the table's edge, her knuckles white. "How did you?" "Carla says hello, by the way." The name hit Courtney like a physical blow. She actually flinched. "Carla?" She hired the first private investigator. Found the hotel receipts, the text messages. "But I have to thank Bernard Ingram for the really interesting stuff." "Bernard?" Courtney whispered, horror dawning in her eyes. "He's been quite helpful. All those fake meeting minutes, doctored expense reports. He kept copies of everything. Very organized. Bernard. Must be why Steve trusted him so much." Tears spilled down Courtney's cheeks, but these weren't the carefully orchestrated ones from her pregnancy announcement. "Derek, please." The Mexico plans were particularly detailed. Derek watched her face crumple. Private schools already researched, villa purchased, offshore accounts set up for the baby. "Your baby. Steve's baby. How long?" Her voice was barely audible. "How long have you known?" "About the affair?" "Since Carla came to me." "About the pregnancy?" "I had a DNA test done months ago." "About your plans to disappear to Mexico?" "Bernard brought us that gift just recently." Courtney's hands moved protectively over her stomach. "Us? Carla. Gail Gentry. You remember her? The divorce attorney? She's been building quite a case." Derek finally moved from the doorway, placing a thick folder on the table. "We have everything, Courtney. The affair, the fraud, the planned abandonment. Even Stella's creative answering service for your Wednesday afternoon client meetings." "Stella would never." "Stella's been recording your calls for months." "Insurance," she told Steve. "Proof of your alibis." "But those recordings work just as well as evidence for us." The carefully constructed facade Courtney had maintained for months shattered completely. She sobbed, harsh broken sounds that echoed in the sunlit kitchen. "I loved him," she choked out. I love him. You were never there, always working, always with your numbers and spreadsheets, paying for the life you're planning with another man, Derek finished. Setting up college funds for a baby you knew wasn't mine. Working late to build a future you were busy destroying. What are you going to do? Derek gathered his files, his movements deliberate. Everything's already done. Gail filed the papers this morning. Your boyfriend's wife did the same. Though I suppose you knew that was coming, since you helped plan his escape. You can't prove. We have Bernard's testimony, Stella's recordings, Mitch Hawkins' surveillance photos, DNA test results, and evidence of your planned flight to Mexico. Derek met her eyes. Would you like me to continue? Courtney reached for her phone with shaking hands. I need to call Steve. He's a bit busy at the moment. Something about his business partner presenting evidence of fraud to the board of directors. Derek picked up his laptop bag. Did you really think you could take another man's child out of the country without consequences? The sound of car doors slamming outside drew their attention. Through the kitchen window, they could see Steve Hurley running up their driveway, his usual polished appearance in disarray. Behind him, Carla emerged from her own car, Gail Gentry at her side. Your timing was perfect, Derek said, watching Steve pound on their front door. Announcing the pregnancy today, when you thought I was at a meeting. Planning to share the joyful news with everyone at the country club lunch tomorrow. One last performance before your great escape. The doorbell rang, followed by more pounding. Courtney's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages. You should answer it, Derek suggested. After all, you have a lot to discuss. Flight plans to cancel. Explanations to create. A future to rebuild from the ashes of all your lies. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving his wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, staring at the evidence of her unraveled deception. The sound of Steve's desperate knocking provided a fitting soundtrack to the collapse of their carefully constructed house of cards. The Riverside Country Club's usual Sunday brunch crowd buzzed with unprecedented energy. Stella McCoy sat alone at her regular table, watching the whispered conversations and pointed looks sweep through the dining room like waves. Her untouched mimosa had long since lost its bubbles. May I join you? She looked up to find Lisa O'Brien standing by her table, still in scrubs from her hospital shift. The nurse's expression was unreadable. Here to gloat? Stella asked bitterly. Here to understand. Lisa sat without waiting for permission. You were her best friend since college. You stood up at her wedding. How could you help her do this? Stella's laugh held no humor. You want to know how? It was easy. So damn easy. Just answer the phone when she calls from her cell. Tell Derek she's working late if he calls the house. Listen to her talk about Steve, about how alive he makes her feel, about the future they're planning. While lying to everyone who trusted you. I told myself I was being a good friend. Stella's voice cracked. Supporting her happiness, protecting her choices. When she got pregnant, she trailed off, staring at her drink. When she got pregnant, you helped her deceive an innocent man, Lisa finished. Made him believe he was going to be a father while helping her plan her escape. She said Derek was distant, uninterested, that he worked all the time, barely noticed her. He was working to support their future. A future she was busy destroying. Stella finally met Lisa's eyes. How long did you know? About the pregnancy? I suspected the symptoms early on, but I thought... Lisa shook her head. I thought they were happy, that they were waiting to announce it. I never imagined. None of us did. Not the whole truth, anyway. Bernard Ingram's voice joined their conversation. He stood awkwardly by their table, his usual confidence replaced by visible shame. May I? Lisa gestured to an empty chair. The unlikely trio sat in silence for a moment, each lost in their role in the deception. I've given my official statement to the board, Bernard said finally, about the fake business expansion, the fraudulent documents, everything. Steve's been suspended pending investigation. And Courtney? Stella asked. Last I heard, she's staying with her sister in Phoenix. After Derek revealed everything, Bernard ran a hand through his graying hair. I've never seen Steve so angry. When he realized I'd exposed their plans. You did the right thing, Lisa insisted. Eventually, too late to undo the damage. Bernard stared at his hands. I kept telling myself I owed Steve for helping me after Rachel died. That covering a few meetings, creating some fake documents. It wasn't really hurting anyone. We all told ourselves something, Stella whispered. I told myself I was protecting my best friend's happiness. You told yourself you were repaying a debt. And now, the club's double doors swung open, drawing their attention. Derek entered, accompanied by his lawyer, Gail Gentry. The dining room fell silent as they made their way to a corner table. He looks different, Stella observed. Stronger somehow. He is stronger, Lisa said. He didn't let this destroy him. He gathered evidence, built his case, and waited for the right moment. While we helped them deceive him, Bernard added heavily. I've been called to testify, Stella said suddenly. About the phone calls, the alibis. Everything. We all have, Bernard nodded. It's time for the truth. All of it. Across the room, Derek caught their eye. His nod was almost imperceptible, but its meaning was clear. The time for secrets was over. Later that afternoon, Stella found herself in Gail Gentry's office, a stack of papers before her. Just tell me what you know, the lawyer said, recording device ready. From the beginning. So Stella did. She told them about the Christmas party, how Courtney had confided in her about Steve the next day, about the phone system they developed for Wednesday afternoons, about helping plan the pregnancy announcement, knowing the entire time that Derek wasn't the father. She was my best friend, Stella finished, tears running down her face. I told myself that's what best friends do. Keep secrets, protect each other. I never thought about who we were hurting. And now? Gail asked. Now I think about Derek. About Carla. About how many lives we damaged with our lies. Stella wiped her eyes. I'm ready to make it right. Whatever that takes. Across town, Bernard sat in a board meeting, presenting evidence of Steve's financial fraud. The offshore accounts, the fake business expansion, the misappropriated funds, all of it laid bare under the harsh fluorescent lights. Mr. Hurley claims these were legitimate business expenses, one board member said. Part of the Mexico expansion. There is no Mexico expansion, Bernard replied, his voice firm. There never was. Just a cover story for his planned escape with his pregnant mistress. The boardroom erupted in murmurs. Bernard caught sight of Steve through the glass walls, being escorted from the building by security. Their eyes met briefly, decades of friendship, trust, and shared history shattered by lies and betrayal. 6 months later, the autumn air carried a crisp promise of change as Derek stepped into the Metropolitan Museum of Nature Photography's annual charity gala. Preston Bird, who had organized the event, greeted him with a warm handshake. Glad you could make it, Preston said, guiding him through the elegant crowd. There's someone I'd like you to meet. They stopped before a stunning photograph of a wolf pack in Yellowstone, captured in the golden light of dawn. The photographer, a woman with dark curly hair, and an expensive camera slung over her evening dress, turned at their approach. Derek Chase, meet Kendra Kane, Preston introduced. Kendra just returned from a 6-month assignment in Yellowstone. The light was perfect that morning, Kendra said, gesturing to the wolf photograph. I tracked this pack for weeks, learning their patterns, earning their trust. Nature's truth is absolute. No pretense, no deception. Derek studied the image, noting the interplay of light and shadow, the raw honesty in the wolf's gazes. It's beautiful. How did you get so close? Patience, Kendra smiled, and respect for their boundaries. You can't force trust, with wolves or with people. Her words struck a chord. Derek had learned that lesson the hard way, through months of betrayal and revelation. As they discussed photography and national parks, news circulated through the gala about recent developments. Courtney's pregnancy had ended in a healthy baby boy, but Steve's presence at the birth had been complicated by his ongoing legal troubles. The board's investigation had uncovered more financial irregularities, leading to criminal charges. I heard about your story, Kendra said softly as they found a quiet corner. I'm sorry you went through that. I'm not, Derek replied, surprising himself. It taught me about strength, about truth, about who my real friends are. And about wolves in sheep's clothing? She gestured to her photograph with a wry smile. Something like that. Derek found himself smiling back. I'm heading to Yellowstone next month. Actually, first real vacation in years. The autumn colors are spectacular. Kendra's eyes lit up. The elk are bugling. The bears are preparing for winter. I could recommend some spots if you're interested. I'd like that. Their conversation flowed naturally, touching on photography, travel, and the importance of honesty. Neither mentioned Courtney or Steve directly, but their presence lingered like shadows at the edges of consciousness. Later that evening, Preston joined them at the bar. Good news, he announced. The charity auction exceeded our goals. Kendra's wolf photograph was the highest bid of the night. Who bought it? Derek asked. I did. Carla appeared beside them, looking elegant in a black evening gown. A reminder that even in the wild, loyalty matters. The four of them shared a moment of understanding. Carla, like Derek, had emerged stronger from the betrayal. Her divorce from Steve was final, her life rebuilding on a foundation of truth rather than lies. To new beginnings, Preston raised his glass. And to honest endings, Kendra added. Derek caught Kendra's eye over his glass, seeing in her direct gaze something he'd missed for so long in Courtney's simple, unvarnished truth. As the gala wound down, word spread through the crowd about Steve's company. Bernard's testimony had led to a mass exodus of clients, and the firm was teetering on collapse. Stella McCoy, who had provided crucial evidence in both divorce cases, had moved to Seattle for a fresh start. Sometimes, Kendra said as they walked to the parking lot, the best photographs come after the storm. When everything is washed clean and new. Derek thought about his journey, from discovery through unraveling to this moment of potential. I'd like to see those Yellowstone spots you mentioned. If you're free next month, I might be persuaded to act as a guide, she smiled. As long as you promise to respect the wolves' boundaries. I've learned a lot about boundaries, Derek said, and about recognizing truth when I see it. They exchanged numbers under the autumn stars, while inside the museum, Kendra's wolf photograph stood as a testament to natural law, survival, loyalty, and the unvarnished truth of wild things. The story could have ended differently, with bitterness, with lingering anger, with wounds that never quite healed. Instead, it ended with possibility. Derek had not only survived betrayal but emerged stronger, surrounded by true friends who had stood by him through the darkest times. News reached them over the following weeks about Courtney and Steve's relationship crumbling under the weight of consequences. The baby, born healthy but into complicated circumstances, became a point of contention. Steve, facing criminal charges for financial fraud, struggled to maintain the lifestyle he'd promised Courtney. Their dream of a fresh start in Mexico had dissolved into court appearances and public scandal. Derek watched these developments with detachment, his focus increasingly drawn to new horizons. The Yellowstone trip with Kendra evolved into a series of adventures, each one reinforcing the value of honest connections and authentic relationships. You know what I love about wildlife photography? Kendra asked him one evening, as they reviewed shots from their latest expedition. Animals can't lie. They are exactly what they appear to be. Derek understood perfectly. After months of unraveling deception, the simplicity of natural truth felt like oxygen to starved lungs. The final piece of his old life fell into place when Gail called with news of the divorce settlement. Thanks to the mountain of evidence they'd gathered, Bernard's testimony, Stella's recordings, the DNA test, the documented fraud, the judge's ruling heavily favored Derek. It's really over, he told Preston over lunch, after signing the final papers. Preston studied his friend's face. You're not just talking about the marriage, are you? The anger, the betrayal, the need to understand why. Derek shook his head. It doesn't matter anymore. They made their choices. I've made mine. The aftermath rippled through their social circle. Bernard's departure with major clients led to the collapse of Steve's company. Courtney's carefully crafted image of the wronged wife shattered in the face of overwhelming evidence. Their friends, once manipulated by selective stories and calculated appearances, now knew the full truth. But Derek had stopped keeping track of these details. His life had taken a new direction, guided by the simple honesty he'd found in Kendra's wolf photographs and in the genuine friendships that had sustained him through the crisis. Ready for another adventure? Kendra asked, showing him plans for a photography expedition to track wild horses in Montana. Derek looked at the woman who had helped him rediscover trust, at the future stretching out before them like an open trail. Always, he replied, meaning far more than just the trip. The story ended not with the dramatic revelation of lies, but with the quiet triumph of truth. Derek had lost a marriage built on deception, but gained a life anchored in authenticity. He had learned that while betrayal could shatter illusions, it could also clear the way for something real to take root and grow. In the end, surrounded by loyal friends and new possibilities, Derek understood that surviving betrayal wasn't just about exposing lies. It was about remaining open to truth, wherever it might be found. Whether in the direct gaze of a wolf pack, the steadfast support of true friends, or the promise of new love built on honest foundations, the truth had indeed set him free. Epilogue. 5 years later. Yellowstone Photography Institute, where Kendra Cainchase was teaching her advanced wildlife photography seminar. Through the window of her office, she could see her husband Derek setting up equipment for the evening's fundraising gala. 5 years of marriage had only deepened their connection, built on the foundation of honesty they both valued so deeply. Still procrastinating on that magazine interview? Derek asked, entering her office with 2 cups of coffee. The prestigious Nature Geographic wanted to feature her wolf conservation work, particularly her documentation of pack behavior that had helped establish new protection zones in the park. Just thinking about how much has changed, Kendra replied, accepting the coffee. On her desk sat the morning's newspaper, another article about Steve Hurley's latest appeal being denied. The former real estate developer would serve at least 5 more years for financial fraud, his empire having crumbled spectacularly after Bernard Ingram's testimony. Have you heard from Carla recently? Kendra asked, knowing the answer from Derek's expression. She's in London, actually. The international branch of her consulting firm is flourishing. Derek settled into the leather chair across from her desk. She sent photos from her engagement party. Said she never thought she'd trust again after Steve. But James proved her wrong. The mention of Steve brought memories flooding back. The last 5 years had reshaped everyone's lives in ways none of them could have predicted that fateful day when Derek confronted Courtney about her pregnancy. Courtney Nolan, as she'd reverted to using her maiden name, now lived in a modest apartment in Phoenix with her son, Alexander. The dreams of luxury villas in Mexico had evaporated along with Steve's fortune. She worked as a junior copywriter at a small advertising agency, her once promising career having suffered from the scandal's fallout. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. She who had painted Derek as the workaholic now struggled to balance single motherhood with entry-level work. Preston's keeping tabs on the legal aftermath. Derek continued, scrolling through his messages. Steve's appeal claimed Bernard's testimony was compromised, but the financial records spoke for themselves. The offshore accounts, the fraudulent documents, the misappropriated client funds. It all came out in the second trial. Bernard Ingram had emerged from the scandal transformed. After his testimony helped convict Steve, he'd started his own consulting firm, specializing in corporate ethics and fraud prevention. His presentations often used the case as a cautionary tale, though he never revealed details that would identify those involved. The guilt of his role in the deception had turned him into a vocal advocate for business transparency. Lisa called this morning, Kendra mentioned, pulling up her own messages. The hospital promoted her to head of obstetrics. She's instituting new protocols for prenatal testing ethics. Derek nodded, remembering how Lisa O'Brien's involvement in exposing the truth had eventually led to her specializing in medical ethics alongside her nursing career. She'd published papers on the moral implications of genetic testing and patient confidentiality, drawing from her experience without breaching privacy. And Stella? He asked, though they both knew the answer. Stella McCoy had never returned from Seattle. The shame of her role in facilitating the affair had driven her to completely rebuild her life. She now ran a women's support group, helping others recognize and escape toxic relationships. Her testimony at Steve's trial about the elaborate deception system she'd helped maintain had been crucial to his conviction. The door opened, admitting Preston Bird with an armful of legal folders. 5 years hadn't changed his methodical nature, though success had added some gray to his temples. His law firm, now specializing in corporate fraud and ethics violations, had handled several high-profile cases stemming from the precedents set by Steve's conviction. Just got the latest update from the custody hearing, Preston announced, settling into another chair. Steve's attempts to modify the arrangement failed again. The judge wasn't impressed by his reformed character claims from prison. Young Alexander, now 5 years old, remained a point of contention. Steve had initially fought for partial custody from behind bars, claiming his rights as the biological father. But his criminal conviction, combined with evidence of the planned Mexico escape, had worked against him. Courtney had full custody, though her life was far from what she'd envisioned during the affair. How's she handling single motherhood? Kendra asked, not from malice but genuine curiosity. According to mutual friends, she's struggling, Preston admitted. The trust fund she'd counted on evaporated with Steve's asset seizure. She's had to learn to live on a budget, handle daycare schedules, manage everything alone. Her sister helps when she can, but it's not the life she planned with Steve, Derek finished. The bitterness had long since faded, replaced by a detached understanding of consequences. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock. Daisy Fields, Preston's sister, entered with her usual quiet grace. The therapist had relocated to Wyoming 2 years ago, joining the Institute's staff to help wildlife photographers process the emotional toll of documenting environmental destruction. The gala guests are starting to arrive, she announced, including some faces from the past. They made their way to the Institute's Great Hall, where Gail Gentry was already holding court near the wolf photography display. The lawyer's reputation had soared after the case, her handling of both Derek and Carla's divorces establishing her as the go-to attorney for complex fraud-related separations. Just finished a case involving offshore accounts, she greeted them. Nothing quite as elaborate as Steve's setup, but it reminded me of Bernard's testimony. The way he documented everything. That changed the whole game. Bernard himself arrived moments later, distinguished now in silver hair and designer suits. His corporate ethics consulting firm had offices in 3 cities, his speaking fees rivaled top motivational speakers, and his book, Trust and Consequences, had spent months on the bestseller list. Still using our case study? Derek asked after handshakes. With names changed, of course, Bernard nodded. The pattern of deception, the network of enablers, the financial fraud disguised as business expansion. It's become a classic example in ethics training. They were joined by Carla, fresh from London with her fiancé James. Success and happiness had erased the haunted look she'd worn during the affair's discovery. Her international consulting work focused on corporate transparency, an ironic twist given her ex-husband's crimes. Did you hear about Steve's former clients? She asked after introductions. 3 more filed civil suits last month. The statute of limitations on financial fraud means he'll probably face more charges when he finally gets out. The conversation shifted to happier topics as more guests arrived for the gala. Derek found himself by the wall-sized wolf photograph that had marked his first meeting with Kendra. The image had become the Institute's logo, a symbol of natural truth and loyalty. Later that evening, as the fundraiser reached its peak, Derek stepped onto the balcony for fresh air. Below him, the Institute's grounds stretched toward Yellowstone's wilderness. 5 years ago, he couldn't have imagined this life, this peace, this sense of purpose. His phone buzzed, a news alert about Steve's denied appeal. The article included a recent prison photo, showing a man aged beyond his years by consequences. A sidebar mentioned Courtney's ongoing financial struggles, her small Phoenix apartment a far cry from the Mexican villa she'd planned to escape to. Any regrets? Kendra asked, joining him on the balcony. Derek looked at his wife, then back at the photo of the man who'd tried to steal his life. Only that I didn't see the truth sooner. But then again, he smiled at Kendra. If I had, I might not be here now. Inside, their friends and colleagues celebrated another successful year of wildlife conservation. Bernard was probably sharing his cautionary tale with newcomers. Carla and James were likely discussing wedding venues with Preston. Gail might be consulting with another client seeking truth and justice. All of them had been transformed by the experience. The betrayed spouses, the guilty enablers, the friends caught in between. Even the perpetrators, Steve and Courtney, served as warnings about the cost of deception. 5 years hadn't just brought changes, it had brought clarity. Derek had lost a marriage built on lies, but gained a life anchored in truth. He discovered that betrayal's greatest gift was the ability to recognize and appreciate genuine loyalty when it appeared. As if to emphasize the point, a wolf's howl echoed from the distant park. Others joined in, the pack's chorus rising clear and honest in the autumn air. Derek and Kendra listened, their hands finding each other in the gathering dusk. The truth had indeed set them all free, some to build better lives, others to face the consequences of their choices. Every howl, every sunrise, every moment of their new life together reminded Derek that sometimes the end of a dream could wake you to a better reality. Inside, the gala continued. Tomorrow, Kendra would teach another class about capturing wilderness through a lens. Derek would analyze conservation funding proposals. Life would go on, built on lessons learned from lies exposed and truth embraced. And somewhere in Phoenix, in a small apartment, Courtney would continue facing the consequences of her choices. In a prison cell, Steve would count the days until his release, his empire turned to dust. Their great escape had become a cautionary tale, their passion cooled by the harsh light of consequence. But here, in the growing darkness of a Yellowstone evening, surrounded by those who had chosen truth over deception, Derek felt only peace. The past was a closed chapter, the future an open trail, and the present moment perfect in its simple honesty. The wolves howled again, their voices carrying ancient wisdom about loyalty, family, and truth. Derek and Kendra turned back to rejoin their guests, leaving behind the shadows of betrayal and stepping into the warm light of authenticity. Life, like the wilderness they now called home, demanded nothing less than absolute truth. In that requirement lay both its greatest challenge and its deepest reward. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.